Ryan Leaf joins us
from the Super Bowl.
From the Super Bowl, Radio Row. He is there, and Stugotz was laughing because he hosts the Bust podcast. And Ryan...
Why is that funny, Stugotz?
Oh, come on, Ryan.
Come on, man. I'm a master marketer, all right? You know about how well that sold because of that?
Yes, well, that's what I was telling Dan. It's genius. If you are hosting the Bust podcast, which you are, that is genius. Good job out of you.
It has taken a minute, Ryan, and thank you for joining us. It's taken a minute for you to get to the place where you're not self-serious about this stuff, right? Because the video of you, yelling at the reporter, Junior Seau, a million years ago, whatever it was that was your introduction to football, that guy is not this guy.
Well, I think when you go to prison, that humbles you a bit. Just, putting that out there. You come out thinking, you know what? Things aren't that bad if somebody calls you a bust, You're not sleeping in a bunk with somebody who killed his whole family. That's a problem.
Put it on the poll, Guillermo, please. Does prison humble you? Because I believe he is right when he says that. But how did prison humble you?
Well, I think that, when the judge looks at you and says that you have no value, I'm going to warehouse you and give you a number. I think that you ultimately, for somebody who's never been marginalized before, it's the first time I really had my eyes open to that, and my perspective had to change. And it didn't mean I changed, right? It took me a long time. Luckily for me, I had a roommate who was, he had his head on straight. He was an Iraqi-Afghan war vet, and he got on me one day about how I wasn't, how much value that I had for the men in there or when I got out. Because he said, Ryan, you're going to get out at some point. What are you going to do? And he was right. And then we started, teaching prisoners who didn't know how to read, And that's like the first time I think I've ever been of service to anybody else. So that humbled me. And it made me think that when I got out, just about over 7 years ago, was you have to make a 180-degree lifestyle change, or nothing's going to change. You're going to be the same guy that everybody assumes you are from what they've seen on TV or heard in press clippings because of your criminal activity and your drug addiction and all that stuff. So, I had a ton of people carry me early on, for sure, and now it's you could call it the life of my dreams, which I thought was supposed to be playing in the NFL.
Ryan, can you walk me through something? Because we've talked before, and I always find your introspection and what I believe to be your honesty in talking about these things refreshing. I think, though, that the last time I talked to you, I'm like, okay, he's like really got a grip on everything. And then I read, a few weeks later after that, whatever the details were that I'm not remembering about, like breaking and entering and pills or whatever it was. I don't even remember, but it was weeks after we talked, and I was like, God damn, talking to that dude is so impressive about how much he's learned, and then the addiction grabs you. I don't know the details, but can you just walk me through what I believe to be honesty, and then 3 weeks later it can feel like something else because the addiction grabs you?
Yeah, I remember I was doing a book tour, before, and I was such a fraud. I knew the lingo, and I thought that's, I needed to showcase the perfected life, and it was just a chaotic chase to do that, to be this complete fraud, and then get back to your hotel and take the pills. I was going through a medical issue at the time. I had a brain tumor. I had to do radiation, and the doctor prescribed some medication. I didn't tell him I had a history, but I just can't take it like everybody else. I'm a drug addict. And so he gave it to me like on December 1st, 2011, and by March 30th, 2012, I was in prison. Literally 4 months, and it was over. Just because of, when you start again, when you relapse, you don't start over. You start exactly where you left off before, and it is a constant dumpster fire that you're just burying yourself in. And that's exactly the truth with you. I remember going on that show. I was in a hotel talking to you on the phone, and once I get off, I look in the mirror and I'm like, you piece of shit, right? What are you doing? You're a fraud. And so I don't necessarily talk as much about things. I just try to be as actionable as possible, because clearly I can go articulate something and fool somebody if I need to, and that's just not the life I want to lead.
Where did you assess I'm a drug addict? What was it that brought you to the admission?
Well, I think there was, plenty of nights where I was just crying out for help, and it was usually looking in the mirror. Like I just would look in the mirror, and I knew I had the problem, right? I was, you junkie, you need some help, and then I would fall on my knees and just be like, somebody please help me. But I couldn't tell anybody because of the stigma that exists, and I thought I was weak, and I couldn't let anybody see this. I was already this failed football player that everybody liked to call a bust, and I can't add to it by, just, terrible human being. And so that's what I thought. It's all this negative self-talk that we hear about, and my mental illness was just ravaging inside me, right? Just the anxiety, the narcissistic personality disorder, and depression. So the addiction is always is a symptom, right? You self-medicate because you have a mental illness, and I have rarely found somebody who's gone through what I've gone through that doesn't have a co-occurring mental health disorder. That's just the start. That is the basis and foundation of usually what it is.
But did you not have names for any of it before realizing that you were self-medicating?
I just, I was going to doctors. I thought the way I put it is I was doing the wrong thing the right way, right? I was in pain, right? So I was going to physicians. I wasn't initially breaking into houses until ultimately the physician stopped prescribing me the medication, and then my hometown became my drug dealer, right? I didn't know a drug dealer. I also didn't want anybody to know I was using drugs, so I didn't tell anybody, and of course I didn't go about it. Living in Montana, it's just it's a complete shock that I wasn't shot by somebody, with everybody who has a gun up there and being in other people's homes. It seems like a lifetime ago, Dan, but I constantly have to remind myself that that's still available. Like if I choose not to do the next right thing today, like that is every bit available to me tomorrow.
The grip is that tenuous daily? How does
not the drug. It's been out of my system long enough, coming up on 10 years sober here April. The behavior, right? If I don't address the mental illness, right? I believe I'm living with CTE. Just with all the symptoms that we know, the depression, the substance abuse, the traumatic brain tumor that I had, all of that. So luckily for me, I had to address it because of my addiction. So now I do the things that I need to. I see a therapist, once a week. I go through anger management, because with CTE and brain trauma, you could have these flashes of just like impulsive anger and things like that. And how do you cope with it best? So those are the things I'm talking about. Like if I stop doing those things, if I stop going to meetings, if I stop going to therapy, if I stop doing the neurocognitive behavior work, that type of stuff, that's when you go down a slippery slope, because then you feel this way and you choose to do what you only know, and the muscle memory of it all is to take medication. And so that's my biggest fear in all this is old behavior, not the drug. That's been out of my system for a long, long time.
What do you regard as the most extreme of the pill use?
I wasn't luckily, right. I didn't escalate to the extremely potent things that are killing people, where people are overdosing. I was looking for Vicodin. Like that worked for me. And but the thing about Vicodin is they have acetaminophen in it, or Tylenol. And I had to take 100 milligrams. And so I had to some way get that amount, whether it was 10 pills or 20 pills. And the amount of Tylenol that I'm so shocked that my liver didn't just crap out on me because of all the amount of Tylenol I was taking with those opiates.
Is football responsible for the Vicodin?
No, I'm responsible. It's my choice. I was introduced to it because of my injuries with football, but I mean, anybody who's injured and has surgery or even goes to the dentist, in the past, they would just hand them out like chiclets. So I'm responsible for it. The injuries came from the football playing aspect of things, but I'm responsible for what I did in all of this.
He's a football analyst for the Believe Podcast Network, and he hosts the Bust Podcast. When Ryan Leaf is going home to home at his most desperate, what was that? 3 homes a day? 5? Like, what was happening there just with your mind as you are in the home of a stranger looking for pills and saying to yourself in some form, I used to be Ryan Leaf. What am I doing?
Well, I didn't necessarily think about that a lot of times. What I thought about is that, like, the ends justified the means, because the vicious cycle of the psychology of opiate painkillers is you fully understand when you are not opiated that you are this junkie, that you are shameful and guilt-ridden because of what you're doing, but you can't feel that way. And you know, if you take these pills, all those feelings go away. It just numbs you. You're like, you don't feel better. You don't feel it. And I think I was searching for that for so long, Dan, just not feel anything. So that's what it was like sitting outside of an open house in my local community, pretending I was interested in buying the home. I'd go look around, and 9 times out of 10 there would be some sort of opiate painkiller in the medicine cabinet. And once they were in my hand, I felt better. They're not even in my system. That's the psychological effect of it. It was gone. And I wouldn't then go to like another house or anything. Like, I had my fix for the day. That covered my day. I'll worry about tomorrow. This is what I needed, and I was fine. Driving back to my house with them in my hand, knowing I got to take them. I mean, it is the single most difficult pull of anything I've ever been around. And that's why I work so hard to try to help those that are going through it, because I know there's a solution, and I know what they're going through in that moment.
You were funny on Twitter talking about your awe and amazement at the idea that you played college football with Tom Brady and he was still playing at that level last year. How much shame is involved with watching Tom Brady? Because you're looking at your path and you're saying that guy doesn't necessarily have the physical gifts I had.
Well, it's not shame. You know, I've really understood what the definition of shame is. Shame is thinking you're a bad person, right? Not that you did a bad thing or anything like that. And I guess I found humility, and when I say humility, that means understanding who you are, fully understanding who you are, and you're okay with it. Like, the guy I see in the mirror, I'm more than happy with. And I think I also found out that it doesn't cost me anything to be self-deprecating at all. In fact, it makes me more relatable. I got to do some of the most amazing things in my life because of football. And I am in awe, that's the best word to put it, of Tom Brady and what he was been able to do, right? My last collegiate football game was against him, and he wasn't even good enough to get on the field, right? And then I'm drafted 2nd overall while he's drafted 199th. The difference between us is his commitment to working his tail off every offseason, regardless of having won a championship or not. And I would argue that the best version at quarterback of Tom Brady was this last year, because of every offseason that he's worked to put himself in that position. It's been amazing and so fun to watch him go through all this.
Football analyst for the Believe Podcast Network, BLEAV. You could listen to his podcast. He's the host of the Bust Podcast. And since you said self-deprecating is now your thing, we bring in Tom Haberstroh, who has an assortment of trivia questions to ask you. Haberstroh, what do you have for Ryan Leaf?
Just one question here, Ryan. You ready to have some fun?
Yes, sir.
We like to have fun here.
Yes, you do.
Oh, yeah, I guess that is the question.
Was that your one
All right,
question?
End of segment.
Yep, good.
Ryan Leaf, you threw 14 touchdowns in your NFL career. 14 touchdowns to 9 different receivers. How many of those 9 can you name?
All right, let's go. Michael Ricks, Jeff
Correct.
Graham, Chris Carter. Or sorry, not Chris Carter. Why am I not thinking his first name? I'm having a tough time thinking of his first name right now. But Carter.
It's Conway. I'll let it slide.
Conway. Curtis Conway. Sorry, Curtis Conway.
Close.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Freddie Jones.
Mm-hmm.
What was the name of my fullback? I can't remember the name of my fullback for whatever
Also
reason.
a Fred.
Fred McCreary. Brian Still. Brian Still was my first one. How many is that?
Sounded like 6. How many are missing here, Haberstroh?
I actually don't know the answer to that
Okay,
question.
excellent, Haberstroh.
Good job, Tommy.
Excellent work by you.
Doing great.
Let's go
here.
again. Let's go. Jeff Graham, Freddie Jones, Fred McCreary, Curtis Conway, Michael Ricks, Brian Still.
We've covered those.
Yeah, we covered those 6. There's your,
Yeah,
there's
but you
your
got to
6.
recap, Dan, just to get yourself back in order. You know what I'm
This
saying?
is not his fault. It's an
Steve
unfair.
Hyden.
Oh.
Ooh,
Yes,
Carolina-
yes.
Nice, that's 7.
Steve Hyden against the Carolina Panthers.
Wow.
Terrell Fletcher against the Carolina Panthers.
Yes.
Wow, what
and
a
then
game.
my 1 touchdown for the Dallas Cowboys, Jackie Harris.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, he got them all. Ryan Leaf, again, the Busk Podcast. One last question for you, different than all the questions anyone has ever asked you in the history of the Super Bowl. We'll get our timing
What's
right.
the single biggest thing the Bengals have to do to beat the Rams?
They got to get to Stafford.
Yeah.
They have to get to Stafford. They have to move him off his spot and make him make the mistakes that he made during that 3-game losing streak during the year. I called the Titans-Rams game earlier this year, and I was so impressed with that defense with Tennessee and how they made him feel uncomfortable, especially in backed-up positions. They got a pick 6. Kevin Byard really had noticed something on film and took advantage of Matthew Stafford. That's the type of thing you got to do, and I think it comes down to the defensive line. And if you're going to go with the defensive line, you most likely think it's going to be the LA Rams. But if Cincinnati's able to do something and make him make a mistake, Joe Burrow's good enough, regardless of how many times he goes down, as we saw, to find a way to win. And they have the better kicker.
Ryan, the analysis
How
that
about that?
Mike
Yes.
Ryan, a little bonus analysis
Yep.
there, and they have the better kicker. Ryan, good talking to you. Thank you, as always, for making the time, sir. And I appreciate that every time you come on here, you do so with a message that tells your story in a way that can help people.
Oh, of course, Dan. I appreciate it. Love your show. In fact, right before I did it, our friend Kate Fagan texted me, and she was all psyched I was coming on the show. So, I
And
love
Kate
that.
Fagan had nothing to ask you, nothing to contribute to.
I did.
What you did? Well, what do you have for him?
She asked me whether I watched Yellowstone
Yes,
or not.
I wanted to know, as a Montana native, what Ryan thought Yellowstone, what has it done right by Montana, and what has it exploited?
It's shown the beauty of Montana. Other than that, it's exploited everything in terms of Montana. Like, there's not that kind of violence. There is that kind of marginalization of the Native Americans on their reservations and stuff like that. So it's done that part. I don't know if it's a great, if it's a great show. The beauty and the acting is very, very good, but it doesn't paint Montana in the best light.
And is it true if I went to Bozeman and I sought out a craft coffee spot that I would be looked down upon by the natives of Montana in the same way that the show does?
No, because I think all the people in the craft coffee spot would all be, the same mindset. So I don't think you would be looked down upon that in that way at all. Also, it's not Bozeman. They pretend it's Bozeman, but the Dutton Ranch and where it's filmed is right outside Missoula. Just FYI, everybody.
Well, there was coverage I was not expecting today. A
Yep.
tour of Montana with Ryan Leaf and Kate Fagan.
Delightful,
it.
though.
No one else is doing that, but there's probably a reason for that. Thank you, Ryan, for joining us. We appreciate it.
You bet. Happy Super Bowl week, everybody.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, Leaf.
Super Bowl week.